designs. This is our 6th episode, and I'm delighted to be here to share some warmer pieces for more winter time. So we have 3 pieces. We're going to be making this gorgeous dress. This is the Olga sewing pattern, but we're going to transform it into a coat. And this is the Edith Poncho, which is fabulous for cooler weather. It's basically a rectangle with rounded edges. It's sewn here. It's got this great pocket, which we're going to sew up. And actually, we're going to make this in linen, but any blanket fabric is going to be great. So let's get started. So the Olga pattern, which I love, and it's a very wide dress. It's almost like a caftan. And it's got this fantastic raglan sleeve, and it's cut all in one piece because it goes right across here and then across the back. So what we're going to do is actually you can cut it as it is with some adjustments that I'm going to share, or we can make the sleeve a little narrower and longer, but also cut into the garment so that it's more of a sleeve and then not such a wide piece. And you could do that for the dress as well. So we have this yoke sort of piece that is shaped like this, and we're going to put it on the fold and cut it out and cut it out and cut it out, and then that folded becomes your sleeve and your back and your front. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make my sleeve longer, keep this line here. All I did was fold this piece upward, and you see how it becomes more like a sleeve. So we're going to look, it's still very wide on me. I could even go to here. The further up you go, you've got to be careful not to make your sleeve too narrow at the wrist. But this is still looking like, you see that. And there are instructions on how to do that in the Olga transformation. So if I've done that, my body piece that's shaped like this, that fits here, is going to have to become narrower so that it meets your new folded line. So in this part, we're going to place them together, and we're going to make a point here and here. That's where they need to join. So that is going to be my new line. And I'm going to continue the shape of the garment right the way down, or I could go and make it more of a straighter piece, so much a slimmer piece. So you're looking at more of a jacket shape with the raglan sleeve. We're also going to cut the front of the Olga panel and add 3 inches onto each front, because your coat's going to button down the front. A little close-up of what I'm doing here. So I added 3 inches onto the front of my jacket, and I just added a little piece here, but this would go all the way down the length of the front of the coat. So this is going to be my basic placket for my jacket. And this, I've also added 3 inches, and because I want to keep this width here. Okay? The issue is this neckline. When we wear a coat and the collar is too wide, the neckline is too wide, it tends to fall off your shoulders, or it will fall backwards because it's too long and deep at the back. So we want to cut a new neckline. And I show you how to do that in the instructions. So we're going to bring this in and basically have a new neckline. So changing this neckline is actually very easy. You're going to slide a piece of paper underneath. And then you're going to trace the neckline as is. Okay. And we're going to cut that out. And we're going to slide that along probably around 3 inches or so. And then we cut this out. So I cut it out, and now I can put it in place, and then I'm just going to move it. And I measured it on my own neck, and I drew a line where I think my piece should be. And voila, a new neckline. Tape it on, and then we're going to just cut off those extra pieces. So our neckline's in place, and I just want to talk about the front of this piece. Was originally you put it on the fold, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to cut the added 3 inches on the front, and we're just going to add the seam allowance on the back here. We're not going to place it on the fold. We're going to stitch this, so it's going to have a seam down the back. You can't have one on the fold and one not. To recap, what we did here, we created our new lines. Fold your pattern on your sleeves, or the yoke, which creates the sleeves. And we added 3 inches to our front piece, and we added an inch seam allowance to our back piece, and we cut out 2 of those. We also did our neckline and made it a little bit smaller by just tracing that and shifting it on another piece of paper. Very simple. So that we did with that. On the front side, the front panel, we added 3 inches to the front. This goes all the way down 3 inches. And we adjusted our side line to meet our new sleeve line right here. We just follow the pattern. You could also cut it straight, which I did. I actually cut it a little straighter than this. And we've still got our pockets, and the pocket placement will obviously move closer in. And the 3 inches, your coat will close. We have facings for the fronts, and we have the neck facing, which we just stitched at the back to join it. We also have a collar piece for the jacket, and we also have our 4 pocket pieces. So here is our back panel. It's beautiful fabric. Feels like cashmere, but it's a blend. And you can see it's a lot. It's at least 3 inches on each side, slimmer than the Olga. That's just a simple back panel cut on the back fold. And our front panels, this is the side, this will be the side seam, and this is the front. Very simple. Actually cut this longer than the original Olga. Okay, so we cut out our pieces, our yoke sort of slash sleeve, and this is how it should look. The curved edge is where our raglan is created. And this crosses over, except this is going to be a collar, so it's going to be like that. So the first thing you do, stitch up that back seam, and we did a French seam and then stitched it down. So the next piece of this would be the pockets. Before you do your garment, you want to do your pockets. And we've done these pockets a million times over. They are a welt pocket, just like follow the instructions in the Olga pattern, and this is what they look like. Easy peasy. Claire is stitching, marking the pocket. So we placed each pocket in its position, just pinned it down, right sides to right sides of the fabric together. Claire is marking the pocket. We've pinned them in place. And she's marking the pocket up. Then we stitch the rectangle and cut into the center of the triangle. Claire is marking 1 inch inward, then we do our center line right through the center of the rectangle. And then lines into each corner. And those will be your cutting lines once you've sewn your rectangle. Looking good. And once you've sewn your rectangle, you cut along your pointed line here and across so that these will then fold back for a nice clean look. Adding the back onto the back yoke of the garment and the raglan seam is very simple. You've got your curved edge, and then you're going to center it onto your back neckline. Right sides together, or you could French seam this and have some interest on the back. So this is how it will look once we're done with it. Now you'll notice I'm seeing that I actually cut this piece cross grain. And you can see the difference in the grain of the fabric from the back to the yoke. That's kind of fun. So you can watch for that. If you don't want it to mismatch, then make sure you're cutting your pieces along the same nap of the fabric in one direction. After we've sewn the back on, you're going to sew the fronts on with the delicious pockets. Regarding the pockets, we sewed the rectangle, cut through, then pushed the fabric to the wrong side. Then, to make that welt, we folded the fabric upward and then down to create that lip and just stitched it down. And then we will put the back of our pockets onto our pocket front. That's how they look, and they look gorgeous. I have sewn my 2 collar pieces together, right sides together. This is the additional pattern piece that comes with the workshop. And flip it around. And we'll press that. I decided to do some hand stitching on my collar, and I'm just using an embroidery thread. And I'm just pick stitching along the edge. I'm also not going right through the fabric, I'm just stitching through to the seam allowance on the inside. Just gives it a nice even stitch line. If I went through all these layers, it would be harder, and it would be, you know, bulkier. This is more for decoration than anything else. But it also will keep the collar from rolling. So a little added feature onto a coat like this is really fun. I love hand stitching. And we could add some more decorative stitching elsewhere. We can do some on the pockets and on the back, and that's all you need to do. So we stitched on the back piece, the back panel, and you'll notice, like I did on the collar, I did a little fun embroidery stitching down the center back of the back yoke. And then we added the fronts. So remember, we added that 3 inches onto the front and the side panels, and it's looking really nice. And the pockets look great. I cut this piece a little longer, and we've gone much narrower than the original. On this coat, we used the Olga, and slightly different. On this piece, it's exactly the same as the Olga. So it's very wide, and it creates this sort of cape feeling, whereas the next one where we narrowed it will be less of a cape piece. Pockets, the same, and then we did add the collar on as well, and the same. But on our new piece, we've gone much narrower. So let me. Okay. So you'll see the difference when I'm placing it. Our piece is that much more narrower. And I think I'm going to take a little bit off the bottom. I'm still thinking about that. I don't have a curved edge at the bottom like this one does. And that's in the instructions too. So there's lots of options with this piece. So now we're going to stitch up the side seams, and we're also going to put the collar on. There is a facing. So this piece, and then these two funny looking pieces will go on each side there. So we stitched on the collar so that we put it on the right side of the jacket, and we put the collar on. And we stitched it, and you'll see it will create the back collar. Then on top of that, we lay the facing down, and the facing goes all the way across and to the corner, and then down just to that edge. So this creates the lapel. Now, because this is unlined, we're just going to fold the facing under 1/4 inch and stitch it down, covering the seam allowance of where you sewed it on. So the back of our jacket just hangs really beautifully straight. And you've got your raglan sleeve. It creates less. So it sits pretty straight because we cut it straight. And it has some movement in it because it is still a wider, it's not tight fitting. And I found this vintage button that I pinned on here. We're going to stitch on. We put the facing in. We've got our collar here, our lapel, and then it just goes in. This is the facing, and we haven't lined it. I used the raw edge of this in this case because it was so pretty, and for the sleeves as well. But you would hem your sleeves, and or you'd put a full facing on, which is like this piece, And if you look at the other Olga coat, we have our lapel here, and it's cut slightly different. We use the same shape as the Olga exactly. And if you look on the inside, I use this fantastic silk, it's a silk charmeuse, I think, and it's just gorgeous. I added a few pleats in here because, you know, I just do. And the whole inside, that sleeve, is the same fabric. So this is a very warm coat. And then we lined it in the pink. So like the front panel has a piece of the same fabric, so it hangs beautifully. When it flaps open, you get the same fabric. And I didn't top stitch the edges. This is a warm blankety fabric. It's a wool. And then our pockets sit inside our lining. And I actually put a little lipstick pocket in here with a flap, which I adore. So that's it for the Olga transformation. And a nice, simple coat that you can decorate with little stitching and do a little embroidery here and there. I hope you have a lot of fun with that piece. The Zoe dress is really lovely. The Zoe is made up of, in the back, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. And in the front, the dress is made of a single front panel, and then you've got this narrow and then going wider here, and then the side panel. We place the pockets between this side panel here and the outer panel, which is great because it's not right on the hip. It's just on the inside. It has a sweetheart neckline, and we're going to put a zipper in the back. Very easy to do. And we're also going to embellish the Zoe with some free motion stitching. I'm using a piece of silk organza almost in the same color as the linen. This linen is called Dove. Sort of a light gray blue, silvery blue. It's really beautiful. So I have some scrap silk organza, and I'm just pinning a piece onto one of my back panels. You can place it anywhere. And what we're going to do is place it onto the front centerpiece, because I want that to be my focal point. A very light pencil. I'm making a heart here. And the light pencil, the stitches are going to cover my pencil marks. You can hardly see it. That's what I'm doing. And then what we're going to do is motion stitch along the pencil lines. So here I'm showing I've got my motion foot on my machine. I've lowered my dogs, and I'm ready to sew. You can see my pencil marks. I haven't used any stabilizer because, and you can, but it's a preference. I like the way the fabric sometimes puckers under my stitches. But if you hold it pretty secure like I'm doing right now, and this is not a fancy machine, this is a Brother sewing machine with a motion foot stitch and a motion foot on the machine. It's pretty easy to do. You just do like sort of a sketchy outline of your pencil marks, and then I'm adding a little detail. And when you stitch on top of a line of stitching, it gives the piece a little bit of shadow. And we'll continue stitching towards the heart. I love doing this. A long time ago, I did a video
of the same kind of thing, creating a sort of image of a girl with a big heart. It was a long, long time ago. I wonder if it's still available. It might be. And we go up, still following the pencil marks. It's pretty easy to do. And you can see, like, it's not all smooth going, but that adds to the just the nature of the sketchy kind of look that you're going for. You can do this like we've done before, where you use a fabric with a mesh background. You can cut out the flowers that are embroidered onto it and free motion stitch it in place and then cut off the edges.
The pieces that I have started to stitch right onto the fabric. What I did was I did the stitching with the panel and, the piece pinned over the top, and then I did sort of the sketch stitching, which is a back and forward motion, which creates this sort of sketchy kind of look that you're using a pencil. In the meantime, you could do much smoother lines. You could also do strip panels. You could also quilt this front panel and maybe a side panel. There's lots of different ways you can embellish this piece. You could also do something like we did in the Rita dress, where we placed a whole panel on top of this, a lighter weight panel, and then we did our circles and cut out the center of the circles, which also is really fun for a polka dot kind of piece. So I'm excited to see how this turns out. We're going to continue doing our sketching and then cutting out. You see here, I've actually cut out the piece. So when we launder this piece, this silk organza, I've cut about 1/4 of an inch out from the edge of the stitching. So this will fray a little bit to make sure that we have sort of a textural thing happening. I do like the back and forward motion because with your silk organza, which is very delicate, it will fray. So you want to make sure there's maybe sort of a double stitch line in places. So I will go over parts of this where there's only just one simple line. It just prevents, and make sure your tension is good. The faster you go, you can tend to go out of tension, so take your time while you're stitching. I'm excited. So on the front piece, I've got some threads here. You just want to clip all the threads. You're sort of going in one continuous loop, but at times I pick up the needle and go onto a new section. So that'll create some little ends that we want to just clip off. Really fun, and it's starting to take shape. So we have this sort of little hearts and leaves. And then I cut out, leaving that 1/4 of an inch. On the back panel, I did a flower. And these templates will be available with the pattern. And I'm just clipping away 1/4 of an inch from the applique. What a fun thing to do. It can change and transform any garment that you're making because you're adding that applique detail and in effect making your own fabric. So you could go wild and do a whole piece of fabric before you even get started. And you do not have to layer your garment with the silk organza and do a top layer. You could do just one layer, and I have not used any stabilizer. You just want to make sure that you pin it down securely and you hold it tight. If you prefer to have a little bit of stabilization behind these pieces, then I would use a very fine iron-on stabilizer that will just keep everything in place. what I don't like about the stabilizer is afterwards you have, you know, it's like an embroidery. They always put like a piece of stabilizer behind it, so it's it's coarser. It's not moving with the fabric. Whereas in this case, it does. I have a favorite hand stitch artist. Her name is Joanne Gibbs. She does is she creates these beautiful pieces of artwork using silk organza on silk organza. And she's inspired me so much. But I have been playing with, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got flowers and leaves, and then I laid a piece of organza on top of the cutout pieces and then hand stitched them on. But you could do the same effect using this kind of thing through different layers. I think that would be fun. That is really fun. Okay, so now we're going to sew our pockets. Our pockets have been sewn on in place. And follow the directions. We've got to add the pockets onto this panel. So our pocket piece will be, actually, our pocket piece will go on the outside piece, which is with the armhole here. So there's our armhole piece. You can see how this linen is just two different colors. Really interesting, cut from the same piece. And actually, if you look at that side, very interesting. Unless I purchased this as a two-sided, but I think it would be, it's too finite. It's too close together, so I don't know. I'm not sure. But I love it. I love what's happening with it. And that's also part of the whole Tina go with the flow kind of thing. It's sort of naturally coming together. So I'm going to put a pocket piece here, and then we have our center panel, our side panel, and then our outside panel. And we're going to stitch those together, stitch around the pockets on that seam, and repeat on the other side. All three panels together. We also, the dress panel is cut with this V here, and that adds some bubble at the bottom. We stitch that together. And I'm really liking how the fabric is so patchy, but it's adding to the garment. So I'm really enjoying how this is coming out. Now, you can see it's quite a wide dress. But what we do here, you can leave it as it is, which is great, is our pockets. But just above the pockets, we add a piece of elastic that will cinch this in. And you can go all the way. Okay, so we're going to move on to the back panel. In the back panel, you'll stitch up the middle seam, the back center seam, and press open the zipper part here, because that's where we're going to put our invisible zip. So we have our piece sewn down the center and our seam allowance, which is much wider, open. We place our zipper so that you have a seam allowance, so the top of the zipper will go to the top of the garment, center it onto the seam, and pin the bottom in place. Okay. We're then going to fold this over and again onto the zipper. And I'm going to pin that in place. And this is just to look good. on the inside of the garment. This makes it for a nice, I can get it in there, it's a little bit, it would be better to press it so that it's nice and smooth. And then we repeat it on the other side. So you're capturing the zip. And just be careful in your, whoops, see I missed here. And we want to make sure we've got somewhat of a straight seam on the other side. Once we've sewn the zipper in place, we're going to open up these basting stitches so that our zipper shows through. And we'll do some stitching at the bottom. And our zipper's in. It looks beautiful on the inside and the outside. Nice and finished. And then I did obviously some decorative stitching to sort of match what's going on here. And if you look on the front of the dress, I did some decorative stitching down the seams. You can go all the way down the seam. Be careful of your pockets. I stopped just above my pocket on that side. I just did some on the top and some on just on one side I did it. So it creates this balance. So now we have shoulder seams to do. Now we have to add our sides, our outer sides, to our dress on the back, like we did the front. Lots of panels. It really is a really pretty dress. And you can make it edgy or you can do it bold. There's lots you can do with this garment. And now I'm going to add those side pieces, and then we're going to do shoulder seams. And then I stitch the shoulders of my sleeve facings, and we'll put that onto the facing, the sleeve, before we do the side seams. Shoulders are stitched, and now we're pinning on our sleeve facings, which I stitched the shoulders together, and I finished the outer edge, and I'm pinning that shoulder to shoulder, raw edges together, and the right sides of the fabric together. The reason we do this before the side seams is because we get a nice clean finish when you're going to do the side seams, and you're going to stitch the facing as well as the side seam all together, and then this will slide nicely inside the garment. And then for our facing, for our neckline, we have this beautiful sweetheart neckline. I love it. It's just delicate and cool. I'm taking something sweet like that and doing it in a fabric like I did behind me is sort of a contrast. You know, you don't kind of expect that kind of neckline on a heavy dress like that. But I'll do it. And this is more, in the linen, it's just a much more relaxed dress. You can wear this piece almost anywhere. On cooler day or warmer days. It's a nice spring dress. Welcoming in some warmer weather. And when I get to my end where my zipper is, I'm going to turn that around and go to the other side and pin that wrapped around my zipper. Be careful not to stitch onto your zipper, but your seam align. So you're going to stitch, and then once that's done, this will flip over nicely and have a nice finished and clean corner for your zipper opener, for your zipper opening. All right, so I'm going to stitch those on, and then I'll return with my side seams stitched as well. Our side seams are done, and the pocket is not on the side seam, it's on this middle panel here, side center panel. And then we placed our elastic, and literally you will stretch your fabric, you'll stretch your elastic and sew your elastic in. And the elastic measures about 6 inches, but that is all up to you. And it goes, it's under the armhole and above the pocket. And it gives it this beautiful bubble look. Our zip is in place, our beautiful flowers at the back. I think it's just an amazing piece. It's quite a statement dress. And you could do this treatment on anything. This was our original that we sewed up, our wintry version in a much heavier fabric. And it's just lovely with a long sleeve t-shirt underneath. It's a good one. So I'm really excited about the new Zoe dress. I think you'll have fun making this up. And you can also do it in block panels. I want to share with you the Edith Poncho. And this is literally a rectangle of fabric with a pocket dead center. So we already cut this out. You can see the rectangle, and you can see the stitch mark here in our pocket. So what we did in the pattern piece is very simple. You're going to fold your fabric selvage to selvage, 54-inch wide. This is a one size fits all. Can you see it? More or less. Fold your fabric selvage to selvage, and then you're going to fold it over again. So you have your square. And the pattern we round the corners here, and we cut the back. When we open it up, we'll cut the front neckline so it's lower than the back. Before we make those stitches on the sides, which is just to keep it together, I've tried it both ways, with and without the seam, and it seems to flop about a lot. So I prefer that it has those stitch marks here. So now we're going to put on our pocket, and we're going to do a little cheating with binding. It's going to look bound, but it's not really. It's going to be a welt pocket with a zipper in between. So our first thing we're going to do is actually put our pocket place in place, and I've marked it right here. Pin it up a little bit. You're going to do your rectangle a little lower than we usually do. So our zipper, this is just a regular little zipper. You can use any zipper. You could use a wider zipper. You could use a chunkier zipper. And just stitch this across here, and then I'm going to stitch these together here just to stabilize those. I'm going to make sure that my my rectangle will be just next to the zipper edge, and covering the zipper bottom. So we stitched our rectangle, and I slit right through the middle, and then I left about an inch on each side, and I cut into the corners. That's on the inside. Here's the outside of our piece. And now I'm going to flip my pocket inside. Okay. So we pushed our pocket through, and then I folded the fabric upwards and downwards to create the welt, which is what that looks like. It's beautiful. So now we're going to put our zipper in. Once we pushed it through, we just top stitched these two sides to secure. So now we're going to put the zipper into our opening so that our zipper will look like so, and it'll open right along the edge of that pocket opening and centered. So I'm going to pin it in place on the right side. And then I'm going to pin it so it's centered onto the left side. Because I want the zipper to show a little bit, just pin the pocket onto the zipper through the welts onto my zipper. Now, stitching that zipper in place, what would be preferable is to stitch just along the edge of the zipper. So our pocket looks fantastic, and just stitch a little bit onto the welt, but it just secures it, and there you have a wonderful pocket. We also stitched the back side to the pocket to create our pocket. The next thing we're going to do is our stitch lines. And they're about 6 inches from the bottom. So I'm just marking where those vertical stitch lines go. And it's about 10 inches from the side edge. And it's 6 inches deep. Another idea for this is to hand embroider this line, which would be really pretty. And you're going to stitch from the binding to that top point. And that's it. You could make this much deeper, but this holds it just enough that it holds it together. This is a wide garment. It's a free pattern. It comes in it's one size because it's meant to just be that, a poncho. And what I'm liking, and you can make it in a heavier piece like this, you could line it, and I wanted to share for your warmer days, these two garments would be really fun together. How pretty. And this is also great with jeans. And this actually looks great with my pajama pants on. So I hope you've enjoyed episode 6 of 4 lines. That's our last episode for 4 lines. And it's a thrill to be able to share what I do with you. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.